So if you'd asked me just a week ago about my favourite budget smartphone so far of 2020, one of the highest ranked efforts would have definitely been this bad boy here, the Realme 6 Pro. At 300 quid, it's not exactly super cheap, but what you get in return for that cash is just impressive value for money. Unfortunately, this last week, Realme has been shunted from that special place in my heart and replaced with Realme. This bad boy here is the Realme X50 5G. It also costs £300, just like the 6 Pro, but it upgrades that tech, so now you get a 765G chipset with 5G support and a 120Hz display for 300 quid. I mean, that's just mental. So lots of viewers have been asking me which one would I go for, the Realme 6 Pro or the new Realme X50 5G. I've probably made it kind of obvious from that intro anyway, but let's do a full in-depth comparison between the two so you can see which one might be best for you. And for more of the latest greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers. So let's start with a look at the design. You've got the older Realme 6 Pro here on the left and the fresh new Realme X50 5G here on the right, just to keep things straight in my mind at least, because when you see them both from the front, they look basically the same. You've got a 6.6-inch screen on the Realme 6 Pro, a 6.57-inch on the Realme X50 5G. You'll literally have to start busting out tape measures and protractors to notice any difference in the dimensions or anything though. The bezels are very evenly matched between the two, and as you can see, of course, you've got your double selfie cutout cam action in the top left corner as well. And even when you flip these phones on over, you'll struggle again to notice the difference beyond a slight difference in the colours and also the patterns. So the Realme 6 Pro is available in 3 different hues. You've got this funky blue coloration, otherwise you've also got white and orange. And as you can see, when it catches the light just so, it throws off this funky lightning style effect. Very snazzy. Meanwhile, the Realme X50 5G is available in just a choice of 2 colours. You've got this lovely, gorgeous, snazzy green model, otherwise you've also got a sort of a silvery white effort as well. And as you can see, they're slightly different pattern as well. And that's literally pretty much the only way of telling these two phones apart. There are some weeny little differences in, for instance, the camera lens arrangement, but they are pretty much identical twins. Both of these Realme smartphones rock a bit of Gorilla Glass 5 front and back, so they are proper tough mothers. You've got a proper bit of screen protector action on there as well. Neither phone is water resistant, however, they're merely splash resistant, so fine if you've got a bit of inclement weather or you spill your beverage on them, something like that. Now the old edge-mounted fingerprint sensor definitely making a big comeback in 2020, which I'm quite happy with. I quite like that design, that styling. And you've got one here on the 6 Pro and the Realme X50 5G, and in both cases, nice and responsive and super swift. And both phones also support raise to wake and face recognition as well, so you can literally just pick them up and they will scan your mug and you'll be straight into your desktops again. You don't even need to touch that fingerprint sensor. So now the software, and there is absolutely bugger all difference between these two brilliant budget blowers. They're both running the latest Android 10, and that's with a nice bit of Realme UI version 1.0 slathered on top. For those of you who don't know, Realme UI is basically just the Colour OS launcher operating under a pseudonym. But you get all those great Android 10 features, like you can dive into the display and brightness, turn on the dark mode if you like. You got full-on gesture navigation, all that great stuff. But you've also got a buttload of great bonus features on there, including the game space tools, which is excellent for any gaming fans out there. Helps to block notifications, helps keep you focused on all of that delicious online carnage. And the other sort of hardware features are basically the same as well. So you've got NFC support for the likes of Google Pay on both of these Realme handsets. You've got dual band Wi-Fi, all that shenanigans. But as the name heavily hints, the Realme X50 5G is the only one of the pair to support 5G connectivity, so going forward, you got that extra bit of future-proofing. So now let's move on to the screen tech. As I said before, they're basically the same dimensions here. You've got a 6.6-inch 6 Pro, otherwise the 6.57-inch X50 to choose from. It's an IPS panel in both cases. Decent contrast, quite strong colour reproduction as well. You can sort of boost the vibrancy in the display settings if you prefer that over more natural hues. Both of them produce full HD plus visuals, and you know what, I struggle to see the difference between the two. They're both nice and strong on those top brightness levels, and yeah, picture quality overall very good indeed. When the Realme 6 Pro came along, it absolutely blew my mind that it boasted a 90Hz screen refresh rate option. Absolutely fantastic, the kind of thing you'd only usually tend to see on upper mid to premium level smartphones. However, of course, Realme then had to outdo itself with the X50 5G, which boasts a 120Hz refresh rate. And that really is super, super rare. I've only seen a handful of smartphones, usually like dedicated gaming smartphones, and the likes of the OnePlus 8 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S20 that boast that 120Hz rate. And to be perfectly honest, certainly to my knackered old eyes, I can't really tell the difference between 90 and 120Hz anyway. Once you get above that sort of 60Hz level, everything just looks silky, gorgeously smooth, so I wouldn't make it a key factor in your decision-making process. And those displays are gorgeous, but Realme definitely hasn't disappointed when it comes to the audio support as well. Both of these smartphones have full Dolby Atmos support, so it'll help to just sort of fine-tune your audio depending on what you're doing a bit of gaming, listening to some music, whatever. You've got full support for high-res tracks on both of these, and you've got all the great codec support as well. So for instance, if you've got some Sony headphones, you get that nice bit of LDAC support, so that audio comes through crisp and clear over Bluetooth, and Bluetooth 5.1 support on both of these Realme phones too. Now, if you're all about performance, the Realme X50 5G certainly impresses at its price point. It's the only £300 smartphone you'll find with the Snapdragon 765G chipset packed inside. You can grab it in either 6 or 8GB flavours. This right here is the 8GB model. And you still get some perfectly respectable specs here on the older Realme 6 Pro as well. What you got is the Snapdragon 720G chipset here, and it comes with 8GB of RAM as standard. And the G at the end of those chipset names basically refers to the fact that these platforms were designed with gaming in mind. So Qualcomm has given a bit of a boost to the GPU in both cases, just to help those games run with a nice fluid frame rate, even on pretty high detail settings. So if you are a gaming fan, and the great news is these Realme phones can blaze through any title on the Google Play Store. If you're a PubG Mobile fan, Call of Duty fan, you can expect a nice consistently smooth frame rate. You know, the Realme 6 Pro saw a couple of tiny little stumbles when I was bombing across the landscape in a vehicle, something like that, but overall very impressive indeed. But of course, if you are deadly serious about your gaming and you want a smartphone that's going to last you a good few years, then I'd point you at the Realme X50 5G, because that 765G chipset offers a bit more grunt, it's definitely better future-proofing, and you can play on those high detail settings with flawless performance. On the storage front, there's no difference between them. You get 128 gigs as standard, and it's UFS 2.1 as well, so it's all reasonably nippy, but not quite as quick as some of the more premium smartphones out there. However, there is a difference as far as micro SD memory card support goes, because the fresh new Realme X50 5G sadly does not support memory cards. So if you do want expandable storage, the 6 Pro is the way to go. And then we have the battery life, of course, and again, both of these Realme smartphones really impress. You get a 4300 milliamp cell here on the older Realme 6 Pro, slightly smaller 4200 milliamp on the fresh new X50 5G. But you know what? Good luck trying to kill either of these things in a single day. If you've got a full charge when you wake up in the morning, guaranteed they will still have some power left last thing at night, even if you're, you zoom in your mates, you're doing a good bit of gaming, using that camera tech. These are absolutely the smartphone equivalent of Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. They just refuse to die. And when you do eventually need to charge them back up again, the good news is you've got full 30-watt fast charging support as well, so they'll both power up in a jiffy. So now let's talk camera tech, and even though it looks like a very similar camera arrangement here on the back of the Realme 6 Pro and the X50 5G, so quad lens setup on both, you do actually get some very different hardware. So while the Realme X50 5G sports a 48 megapixel primary lens using Samsung's GM1 sensor, what you get here on the Realme 6 Pro is actually an upgraded 64 megapixel primary lens using the Samsung GW1 sensor. Now, I found that everyday photos do look pretty good no matter your choice. You get quite punchy colour reproduction, but those colours don't look unrealistic, at least not unless you chuck on that chroma boost feature. The Realme 6 Pro did definitely oversaturate slightly more often than the X50 5G when you're shooting high contrast scenes or just general daylight photos in very strong light indeed. The X50 definitely wins for HDR situations, even if it's not quite perfect. And while you can capture more detail using the 64 megapixel mode on the 6 Pro, that difference in clarity is only really obvious when you zoom right in. If you like a bit of ultra-wide action, well, the good news is you've got an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle lens on both of these Pros, which produce very similar results. And you've also got a 2 megapixel macro lens on both as well, so you can jump on into the ultra macro mode and shoot a very up-close personal shot of an insect or a flower, if you like. However, these Realme smartphones do differ when it comes to the final lens as well, because here on the 6 Pro you actually get a 12 megapixel telephoto lens offering a 2x optical zoom, something that's very rare at this sort of price point. You can zoom here on the Realme X50 5G, but it is just a digital zoom. The final lens here on the X50 5G is in fact just a simple basic 2 megapixel depth sensor, and of course both these smartphones can shoot full-on portrait mode shots with a nice bit of bokeh action in the background. You've got full control over that as well, so you can bump it up, lower it back down again. And besides the fact that you've got the 64 megapixel mode here on the 6 Pro and the 48 megapixel mode here on the X50 5G, the rest of the camera modes are basically the same. So for instance, you've got a Pro Expert mode on both, which allows you to piddle about with the likes of the ISO levels, the white balance. You can shoot full-on raw photo images as well. You've got a bit of night mode support as well, which again functions perfectly well on both of these smartphones. You can just capture lots of different images at different exposures, melds them together, and what you end up with is a really nice bright good looking result. And on the video tip, no real difference there either. You can once again shoot up to 4K resolution footage, of course. You got the full-on super steady image stabilization mode as well if you want it, or ultra steady as Realme calls it. So as you can see, not a huge amount of difference between the two. In terms of the general camera performance and the features, it's really all about that telephoto lens. If that's going to be a deal sealer for you, then the 6 Pro is probably going to be your huckleberry. And then if we swap around to those front-facing cameras, both the Realme X50 5G and the Realme 6 Pro use a 16 megapixel primary selfie lens using Sony's IMX471 sensor. However, they also have a secondary lens. Here on the X50 5G, it's a basic 2 megapixel depth sensor, whereas here on the Realme 6 Pro, what you actually get is an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle lens, so you can fit in more background action or a big group of mates if you've got more friends than I do. And that's the only real difference. Apart from that, you get some good looking selfies on both of these smartphones. Again, trying to avoid sort of harsh lighting and things like that, and you'll be absolutely fine. So that right there is my full comparison between these two great value Realme smartphones. So if you've been umming and ahhing about which one to get, hopefully that has helped. It'd definitely be great to hear on personal thoughts down below which one you are most tempted by and why. And for more of the latest greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers everyone, love you!